very rare in human history that you have the rise and the emergence of a power the size of China. I think what Steve has envisioned with the Schwarzman Scholars and the concept overall gives Westerners a unique opportunity to step into China and then to go as deep as they want.
Immediately, when I stepped off the plane, the first thing that I saw was a sign saying, "Beijing welcomes you." It just felt like I had landed in a different planet.
I remember getting into a cab and having my address to my hotel written down because I didn't know how to say it.
You sort of are going down this highway and you see everything transition from the countryside into the city, and you see a lot of new buildings, and the architecture is actually very distinctive. You go down a block, and at the beginning of the block you'll have an old imperial style building, one of the few remaining gorgeous courtyard houses.
And then you look across the street and you see a skyscraper that was built in 6 months. That dichotomy is really interesting.
If you really open yourself up to it, there's not a single element of Beijing life that at one moment or another will not blow your mind.
The art scene in Beijing is really vibrant. There's this district outside the city called 798, and you can go there and just see modern art that has, in some ways, taken the world by storm. There's a very vibrant music scene, and there's also a lot of local talent that's very experimental. The university district in Beijing has an incredible range of bars, clubs, pubs, restaurants, and everything in between. There's amazing diversity of Chinese cuisine, and your average street will have Northeastern Chinese food, Sichuan Chinese food.
The concept of being a vegetarian in China is a little new. When you have the means to afford meat and you're choosing not to, it's very confusing. You definitely have to be careful, but it's easily done, and I think you'll find that the vegetarian dishes there are incredible.
I found learning Chinese to be difficult.
I, to this day, will say that that was the most challenged I've ever been.
It's sort of, I think, almost impossible to really learn it in an English-speaking environment. And it wasn't really until I moved there that I actually got really good at it. Before you realize that you sort of have bettered your tones and your vocabulary is a little bit more advanced.
Even the most small day-to-day tasks like going to get a cup of coffee or going shopping can turn into not only a learning experience from a language perspective, but also from a cultural perspective.
One thing that's coolest perhaps about taking public transit in Beijing is that Chinese people will just strike up a conversation with you. Where are you from? What's that like?
To know that you can get by somewhere that's so incredibly far away and so different than where you're from, you begin to feel you can do anything.
Get in the culture as deep as you can. Get lost, go places where you don't understand the dialect, eat the food that you don't want to eat. The more you throw yourself into it, the more you get out of it.
I was on a 26-hour train from Beijing to Sichuan province, which is famous mainly for its extremely spicy food. And I had the most incredible and completely world-changing meal that had me crying and sweating, but it was fantastic. I took about 4 10-hour buses to get up into the Tibetan plateaus. In terms of natural beauty, I don't think I've ever been exposed to anything as stunning. At Tsinghua University, there's a lot of really smart people. After lecture, as everybody's filing out, that's where the conversations start. People are thinking, and the moment they leave, they are going off about something they disagreed with in that lecture or an idea that occurred to them.
I think if you want to be a citizen of the world today, you need to have a deep understanding of another culture. And you can't get that without really submersing yourself in that culture. And the thing you really miss, unless you're there, is the texture of Chinese friendships.
The friends that you make, I think, in Beijing are friends for life.
Not only do you develop friendships with the locals and with Chinese people, because there is that curiosity that goes both ways, but in addition to that, China attracts this really interesting group of expats. And not only are they great friends, they're great contacts to have and great people to learn from. Studying in China has just given me a worldview that is really invaluable. To recognize that there are people out there and there's a culture out there that's just so unique and so different from what you've grown up with, I think really makes you realize, how small you are, but also how much you can do with that knowledge.
It's such a different perspective that I have because of the time I spent in China, and I really feel like it's informed everything I think about as far as international affairs goes. I think it will serve me well going forward.
I think there's a number of key skills that any next generation leader is going to have. One of them is surely going to be an understanding of China. What makes the Schwarzman Scholars unique is that it gives students an opportunity not just to understand China intellectually, but to really develop that gut feeling, that instinct that is going to be so valuable in trying to understand this country in the future.